God, I do ask for your wisdom and understanding today. Because as we live our lives, we're influenced by so many different things. And as we experience things, it influences us. As we see our culture and see our world, and as we experience mistakes and successes, and it goes on and on, we were just constantly being bombarded by things that shape us. And we want you to shape us. Your thoughts, your character, your conduct, your instruction. And so, Lord, I pray that this morning as we look into marriage, as we look into that is not perfect, as we look into that relationship that is so close and intimate, and sometimes can be volatile, chaotic, difficult, we want your voice to speak. And so, God, I pray that you would use what you've laid on my heart this week, that it can in some way be a part of that in our lives. That it can in some way be something that strives us and spurs us on to something greater, to experience life as you want us to. And Lord, we ask this in your name. Amen. Last week, we started a 4-week series called Built to Last. Does anyone remember what we talked about last week? Okay. We're going to... No one remembers at all? Okay, family. You just didn't want to talk about that, right? Families. We talked about families that are built to last. We're going to look this week at marriages. Marriages that are built to last. And one of the things that we talked about last week is that there's a lot of things in our culture that are disposable. Things that you get, and it's only expected to last for a few years until you get the new model or the next version or whatever it might be. And that's fine for us because we like constantly getting new things. We like getting the new version of a phone or a new car or new furniture at home. We like not having to just buy one set of bananas and that's it. We need to buy more, right? New is good. Having multiple food, whatever it is. But there's things in our life that you don't want new. There's things in our life that we want to have durable. We want them to be faithful. We want them to be lasting. And we want them to not just kind of endure or maintain, but we want them to thrive. And families are one of those. And we talked about the ways that God says we can build families that last. Today we're going to talk about how we can see in God's words indications for how can marriages be built in a way that they will be built to last. As we begin kind of this conversation, let's take a little survey. Those of you that have had maternity leave, do you know what that is, maternity leave? Has anybody had maternity leave for more than 3 months? More than 6 months? How long were you in maternity leave? You're like, I'm still in maternity leave. 6 months? Okay, we didn't raise your hand. Okay. It's tough when you have a baby. It's tough, right? Your life changes, and you need to be at home. And so whether a mom's going to be a stay-at-home mom as the child goes, or whether the child's going to go back to work, whatever it is, it's important to spend that immediate time with that life-changing event of having a child, because there's a lot of needs, there's a lot of adjustments, a lot of changes that take place, that it's important. Marriage is also a life-changing thing. Marriage is also something that even though you might have been dating for a while and now all of a sudden you're married, something is very distinctly different in marriage, that it is a life-changing thing. Have you ever heard of marriage leave? No? Have you heard of honeymoons? Okay, let's do this. Who was on a honeymoon for more than a week? Okay, more than 2 weeks? Anyone still in their honeymoon? This is where you come for your honeymoon. You know, we usually 1 week, maybe kind of a long weekend, 2 weeks is a honeymoon. God knows that marriage is a wonderful thing for his people, but that it is also a difficult thing. Did you know that God calls us to have marriage leave? Do you think I'm kidding? Some of you, I think I am. In Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 5, he says, a newly married man must not be drafted into the army or given any special responsibilities. He must be free to be at home for 1 year, bringing happiness to the wife he has married. Pretty cool, huh? So it includes in that for the wife to have help, in this new dynamic of marriage. 1 whole year. So tomorrow, when you go back to work, you can let your boss know. If you are married, I never got this. And if you're planning on getting married, you can say, just to let you know, that the wedding's in, April, I'll be gone for a year. But why does God say that? He didn't have to say that, but apparently he thinks that there is something incredibly valuable in marriage, but also something that needs worked on and needs intentional time and energy spent on. Enough, he feels this enough that he records it in part of his law of what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to act, what are the things they're supposed to keep and perform and do, and in the context of all of that, of how to treat people that mistreat you, how to handle crimes, and how to handle those that have nothing in your community. In the midst of all that, he has this piece about marriage and how it's so important for it to start well, to be given time, to be given that attention. And it's true, isn't it? How many of you are married? Okay, some of you aren't admitting it. But, Craig, I know you're married. Raise your hand. She's sitting right next to you. See that? But I was telling Mandy this week, I was hoping that she might be gone this week when we talk about this. Because what I'm going to share, I'm not an expert in. So now she's going to find out that I know it, I just don't do it. Which I don't know which is worse. And not only is she here, but our kids are gone for the weekend. So now there's no one to distract her from listening. So I'll try to do better at these things. But as I share these, just know these aren't things that we do perfectly, but these are things that I see as I go through God's Word that He's revealing about Himself, and as He's talking about couples that are coming together and they're living this bond together, what makes it something that is built to last? Because as a couple, you're going to go through incredible difficulties, incredible joys, and incredible normal things. You're going to go through it all. And if it's to be built to last, I think there's a few things that can be very important. So let's get into those. There's 4 of them, and so I want to move through them somewhat quick. So we have our little spoken bubble there that they're going to appear in. Never stop dating. Never stop dating. How many of you go on dates once a week? Okay? If you haven't got the hand, you might, if your hands are in your pockets, just get them out because we're going to have hand raisings and things like that. Anybody go twice a month? Okay, once a year? Has anybody ever been on a date since your honeymoon? Okay, we're getting more. Is anybody saying, what's a date? What is, I don't understand what that is. When I say never stop dating, I'm not using dating as a noun, but I'm using dating as a verb. Because it's not just about saying, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to go to this restaurant on this day, and that's the date. And then we're going to go to this restaurant on this date, and that's the date. Then I'm not saying never stop scheduling events, but I'm saying never stop dating. If you know somebody that's single, like somebody that's in your family or something like that, and you hear that they're dating somebody, and you go up and you ask them, I hear you're dating someone, and they say, oh, I am. Or if it's a guy, yeah. And you ask them, how is it going? What are you looking for? Well, I went to Longhorn at 5 o'clock, and then I went to see this movie, and then the next week I went here. That's not what you're asking, right? You're asking for the verb, the dating. How's the dating experience going? What are you doing in the dating experience? Yeah, you didn't know what it was. Like, I don't know, I'm just wandering through it. You're trying to learn them, right? Trying to learn if they're weird or not. trying to hide the fact that you're weird. And told you this wasn't going to go well. No, but in all seriousness, you're trying to learn them. You're trying to figure out who they are, what are their goals, what are their dreams, what are their aspirations. And so when you ask somebody that might be in your family, how's it going, they'll answer with those things. Not, well, we went on 4.2 dates. The one wasn't a full date because there was snow and we had to go home early. They'll say, oh, it's great. We both have this in common. Oh, it's great. We both have a passion for this. Oh, it's really neat because their goal in life is this, and I think that is admirable or commendable. So you're learning, you're studying, you're engaging in figuring out what makes that person tick, what makes them, them. Correct? A lot of times in marriage that stops. You might still go out to events and go out to eat, but if you're not dating is a verb, learning who each other are, you're just going to have less money and probably way more. Right? It's important. Never stop dating. Never stop spending that time trying to learn each other. I hear people sometimes say, well, in kind of different counseling sessions or things that I read where one person will say to another, well, you're not the person I married. I always find that strange. Well, of course not. Neither are you. We're constantly changing. We're constantly experiencing life and being shaped and molded, and our dreams and our goals and our hopes and kind of what we want out of life is constantly evolving and changing with life. We're not the person we used to be. And if we don't take time to continually learn who the other person is, continually date them, whether you go out to eat or not, but continually want to learn, want to know who they are, want to discover the hopes and the dreams and the fears and the worries, you'll end up saying, I don't know you. Like, who are you? Hopefully, in the way, who are you? I don't know. But you learn that. Have you ever seen the dating shows where they ask the couples questions without the other one knowing the answer? And they're kind of funny to watch because sometimes they get the answer right, but almost always when they get the answer right, it's about a detail or an event. Have you noticed that? Where'd they go to college? Where'd they grow up? How many brothers and sisters do they have? Things like that. What sorority or fraternity did they belong to? Those are the answers they get right. The ones when they get it wrong are usually dealing with that verb dating. What are they most afraid of? And it's usually the husband. Says, well, spiders. Because I remember when we were dating, she was afraid of spiders. And they're like, no, the answer is retirement. Or something. I don't know. You get what I'm saying? That it constantly is changing. That if you want to have a marriage that is built to last, you never stop dating. Never stop learning about each other and allowing the other person to learn about you, because we are always changing and evolving in who we are as a person and what our goals and what our dreams are. It's in learning that builds that marriage that will last. The next one that I want to share is this. Love smart. Do any of you love smart? Do you know, if you advertising that you hear, this is a phrase that is common, not love smart, but invest smart. Have you heard that? Eat smart, buy smart, exercise smart. Have you ever heard those terms? What do they mean by it? They mean don't do something just because you think it will work, but do something that you know will bring about the result that you want, right? So if you would eat smart, you would need to think about what are the foods that I need to eat that will have a true result, rather than to not eat smart is just doing just what feels natural. Well, I'll eat this, well, I'll eat this, and I think and I assume that this will be the result. That when they say exercise smart, you think, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to run, or I'm going to go and I'm going to just walk on a treadmill, and I just assume that will work. And some guy comes on a 30-minute commercial on TV and says, well, you got to exercise smart. Just walking on a treadmill doesn't do as much as taking half the time doing this type thing. God says, or we hear that Paul says about God in Ephesians chapter 5, he says this. He says, figure out what will please the Lord and then do it. Don't waste time on useless work and mere busyness. What he's saying to the church at Ephesus is this. They were trying to please God. They were trying to do things that would make God happy, but they weren't thinking, what will make God happy? They were just thinking from all that they knew of pagan worship and idol worship and their culture, they thought, oh, well, yeah, God might like this, and they would do it, and they'd spend all this time, like every day, polishing a cross that they had, and thinking that, well, if I polish this every day, God is going to be tremendously pleased. And now I'm going to polish it at every meal. I'm going to get it out. I'm going to polish it. And God's going to be so pleased. They were doing these kinds of things. And Paul is saying, instead of just doing what you think pleases God, figure out what actually pleases God and then do it. Otherwise, you're just doing busy work. The same applies for a marriage that lasts. To love smart. To consider how the other person experiences love. Some of you have heard me talk about the 5 love languages. Any of you hear that before? Okay. Now you all have, so you can raise your hand next time. The 5 Love Languages is a book by Mr. Chapman, and the premise of his book is that we all experience love in generally 5 different ways. And we might have a language that we speak that is the top, and then we have some others that are down below that. And his premise is that as people, and especially as married couples, that it's not always the same language that we're speaking. So the 5 love languages that he presents are words of affirmation, giving and receiving gifts, acts of service, physical touch, and quality time. And what that means is that you know and you feel loved when somebody loves you in the way that you naturally receive love. Let me give you an example from our own life. Mandy, you can take a test on this. Those of you that I've married have taken this test. And I don't know if you remember what your score was with that, but you can go online and take a test for this. Mandy's words of affirmation are through the roof. So if you're out there and you want to make Mandy feel loved and appreciated, say something nice to her. It's easier than gift giving. It costs less. Say something nice. Appreciate her. My words of affirmation, I actually got a 0. No, I didn't get any points for it. None. So you can say all the kind things you want to me. Oh, Pastor Dave, that was a great message today. I love your balding head. It's wonderful. And I don't care. I don't know why. Not that I would rather you say something nice than not nice, but it doesn't do anything for me. But maybe it does. And so the dynamic here, to love smart, if I would not love smart, which happens sometimes, I would forget that words of affirmation are important to her because they're not necessarily important to me. Quality time, especially shared activity, is important to me. That's how I experience that someone really cares about me, that they took time to do something with me together. Just to give you an example, if Mandy comes down and it's in the morning and she's getting the kids ready, and I say, Mandy, thanks so much for packing the kids' lunches. You're doing a great job with this, and you hold our family together. Man, we couldn't do this without you. You know what she does? Her face changes. You should do it. Thank you so much. And you can just tell. It was like before, when I'm just hanging out, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Let's do something. What do you want to do? Let's do this together. Something, she doesn't do that. And it's like I'm speaking Russian, and now all of a sudden I've tapped into what her language is, and all of a sudden she understands it and experiences it's loving smart. That's how we're called to love God. To not just say, well, I think God's going to like this, or I think this probably pleases God, but to actually think, what does please God? And how can I live that out? It's the same with our spouse. To love smart. To consider, how does that person experience love? How do they give love? And to figure that out and to do it. Do you know the best way to do that? Never stop dating. As you learn each other, you start to learn those things. Love smart. Next one, it says, go first. There's a cute story, I guess, that I found of a couple that was fighting, and they ended up giving each other the silent treatment. Any of you done that? You won't answer because you're still in it. They're giving each other the silent treatment. 2 days into their mute argument, the man realized that he needed his wife's help because he had to catch a flight the next day to Chicago for a business meeting, and he had to get up at 5 a.m. Not wanting to be the first to break the silence, he wrote on a piece of paper next to her bed, please wake me up at 5 a.m. I mean, he said, please. Please wake me up at 5 a.m. The next morning he woke up only to discover that it was 9 o'clock in the morning. He had missed his flight, his wife was already up and out of bed, and he was furious. And he was about to go, try to figure out, without talking, why she did this to him and made him miss his flight. And all of a sudden he noticed on the end table a piece of paper with a note that said, it's 5 a.m., time to wake up. Have you ever, in your relationship, struggled with who goes first? Think, well, they should. I shouldn't be the one to have to, start the reconciliation. I shouldn't be the one to say I'm sorry, or, they're the ones that wronged me. And you get into stalemate. And what we see with God is that He could have taken a stalemate position with us. That we are the ones that have wronged Him. We are the ones that have turned away from Him. He could have easily stepped back and said, I'm not going first. You need to come, you need to prove yourself, you need to come, and you need to fall before me, and you need to have so many years of perfect living for me to even start to engage you. But what do we see in God's character? While we were still sinners, while we were in our worst of our worst, Christ came and died for us. God goes first. And what does Paul say as husbands? And you can even include wives there, because as he writes it, they both apply to both. It says, love your spouse as Christ loved the church. Christ went first. Christ loved first. Christ loved regardless of knowing what the outcome would be. A marriage that is built to last not only never stops dating and loves smart, but it goes first. Each partner saying, I'm going to go first. I might not have to be justified in going first. I might actually have some reason not to go first, but I care so much about it that I am going to model Christ, and I'm going to go first in this and start to build and open those doors. The last one, never give up. This might sound kind of cliche, but the idea of commitment is an umbrella that goes over all of marriage. It's an umbrella and a framework that God desires because it's a desire He has in His heart for us, where He has that commitment, where He says, I will never give up on you. No matter what, I will always be there for you. And He says in marriage, I want that to be the framework. Now Jesus, in His Gospels, He gives places and times where it doesn't always work out. We realize life is filled with just struggles and difficulties. He said about unfaithfulness and other things. He recognizes that it doesn't always work out in our human world, but still commitment is key. Commitment over it all is what makes it last. Think about it this way. I have two quick examples, and then we'll finish up. Have you ever seen a movie where a group of people are on a deserted island because of something that somebody did? They forgot to refuel the boat. It sounds like Gilligan's Island. I don't know if that happened there. But they get there, and they're all arguing, well, it's your fault. Well, no, if it's your fault, if you would have done this, and whoa, we wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for you. And they're fighting and fighting and fighting. And finally someone stands up and says, this is doing us no good. We're all in this together. What are we going to do? When you know you are in it together and there's no other option, you make it work. It's a driving force behind it. It changes how you treat each other. If you buy a new car, and I realize this is probably not a great example for marriage, but if you buy a new car, and you know that for 10 years you will not be able to afford another vehicle, how will you treat that car? You'll treat it well, right? If you buy a car and you know, hey, in 2 years I'm getting a new one, how will you treat it? We're going to see how fast we can get to the stop sign. See how fast, stop, you know, and I bet we could go around that turn and get up on two, you know, whatever it is. If you know that it doesn't need to last, then that motivation to make it work kind of dissipates. But when you know that this is together, that this is commitment, there is freedom in that. In saying freedom to be yourself, freedom to make mistakes, but also a great motivation to say, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make it work because it's worthwhile. So I encourage you to consider that in your lives, if you're not married and you're thinking about getting married, that it is so important, and God desires to use marriage as one of the primary ways to show who He is, to demonstrate His character in us, that we might be able to see who we are in Him and what love can be like. So I encourage you with those things, to never stop dating, to love smart, to go first, and never give up. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for your ability to lead us and guide us in all aspects of life. And marriage is not all tied up in a neat bow where everything's perfect. But there's things that we can do to have it be built to be something that lasts. As we said last week, just like with families, it might be described as kind of that work truck, that it's not the shiniest, it's got some dents and scratches and stuff, but it is durable, it is faithful, it is comfortable. It's a place that just being in it evokes a feeling, a memory, something good and worthwhile. And I pray that you would help us do that in our marriages, that you would help us do that in our new relationships, whatever it might be, that we could be people that experience the blessing that you offer to us. Lord, we ask this in your name.